And the issue that we were trying to explain during that time was that our experiences derived first and foremost from being dehumanized as a people, not as a woman. And until such time that I, as a woman and as a human being, get to a point where my human rights are respected and I can live as a human being, that's when my womanness also come to the fore and I can ask a number of questions. So what I'm saying is, class, race, and gender matters. Not to each and every woman, not to each and every person necessarily, but from where I sit and from where I come from, those are the issues that remain constant reminders and challenges in terms of the discourse. So yes, respecting different views and experiences, and taking my experiences as a black woman also to inform the feminist movement, because sometimes I think it's a one-sided issue, where today I'm being told that we call it womanism and tomorrow it's ananism, and I must just go along with it. I think as an African woman, we have also a lot of contributions to make to the feminist discourse. I also think that in our discussions, we alienate rather than embrace. And when I say alienate, it's the way that we frame our issues. And so it becomes a us and them. And I will give you an example. When we talk about violence against women, and we talk about gender-based violence, it is quite clear who the perpetrators are and who the victims are. Because there is, we are faced with a real situation where women are violated. And because of that, we don't engage with men to the extent that we need to. Because I always say to people, men have not come from Mars or from Jupiter. They live next to us. So that is one issue. And the final issue is that it seems like we are very protecting of spaces. If we gain a little bit, we don't want to let go. We don't want to open up for fear that that space will also be taken away from us. But I want to say that it is a democratic space that we are all wanting to partake in. It's not just a gender space. It's a democratic space. And it depends on how, therefore, we engage with that space without necessarily wanting to overprotect it. Currently, the issue in Namibia has been about gender quotas. And I must admit that I have never found a very good explanation either way. I've always been caught in the middle of trying to understand when should we go for gender quotas, when should we not go for gender quotas. So I think those are the issues that I would like to really put on the agenda. But most importantly, please respect differing views and differing experiences derived from where people and women come from. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, since we're more than half an hour into the session, I think I'm going to hold my comments and open it up to you. I surrender my 5 minutes. I'll come in at the end. So let's hear from this section of the audience. What do you feel are the burning issues that need to be on the agenda in a dialogue with other movements? If you're positioning yourself as speaking from a women's movement perspective, what would you put on the agenda for a dialogue with other movements, social and political movements? And if you're speaking from another social movement position, what would you put on the agenda in a dialogue with women's movements? Just to remind you what the questions are. So, anyone from here? Yes. I'm sorry, sir. I have to refer to you as the man with the beard. Yes, I can barely see. Yes.
I will start with...
I'm sorry, Bharat. I'm sorry. Sorry. I didn't recognize you. This right.
Start with where Uma Chakravarti stopped. After a long time I heard her voice and saw her. I think that from a women's movement, women's liberation movement standpoint, the femininity and masculinity for each caste in India and South Asia is different. Femininity and masculinity for each religion is different. So religiously oppressed situation, caste oppressed situation, race oppressed situation, at the same time class and nationality oppressed situation. These are the situations which if they are not taken into consideration while defining a liberatory program for liberation of women, and actually I would not say ambitious thing like abolishing masculinities, but reducing masculinities, then I don't think that we can have a unified women's movement, a women's liberation movement, or even men engaging in a unified manner across the society. So this is most immediate problematic, I think, in front of the women's movement, also in front of the men who want to engage with the women's liberation movement. That should be a point on the agenda for discussion for in future.
Thank you. Yes?
Can I go next? Okay. Speaking as a white, middle-class, heterosexual, privileged woman, but starting from the point that I think the personal is political for all of us. That was a feminist slogan back in my early days when I was young, and I think that's something else that we need to take forward when we're having this debate. I'm really conscious, coming from the women's movement, that when I've been talking to my feminist friends, they say, "What? You're going to a conference about men and gender equality? You're writing about men? Why are you doing this?" And then from my male friends, "Well, what are we supposed to be? How are we supposed to be involved in this? You feminists, you're always anti-men." So I'm kind of always finding myself caught between the two. I have a lot of help in that, I think, from my lesbian and gay friends and from the LGBT movement, who have a different understanding of some of these issues. So I thank them for that. But I guess a few things I want to say. One is that as women, as feminists, I think we need to recognise that we've got a long way. We've come a really long way in the last few decades. But actually, if we're going to go any further, we need men to come with us. And in order for that to happen, men need not just to talk, but they need to walk the talk. Women are not going to do it for them. Men need to stand up, as everybody here is doing, and to say we stand for gender justice. We want to stand alongside women, with them, together. So there are three things in terms of points of discussion that I think are really important for us as we go forward. One is my first point about the personal being political. The second point is Kate Gilmore's point yesterday about deviance, difficulty, discussion. The word intersectionality is often used in academic circles. I don't like it very much. But talking about the difficult things, not just talking about the easy things, talking about power in particular, talking about caste, class, sexuality, race, poverty, the things that maybe are not so easy to discuss. I've had a lot of discussion about really good projects, but what are the ideas behind those projects? What are the real challenges? Issues around confronting and talking to the men's rights movements in many countries is one of those difficulties, I think, and one of the things that we need to think about how we deal with that. There are increasing movements that are anti-feminist, anti-women, and then we need to not just ignore them, but to take those on board. And finally, looking at structural as well as individual issues. That's come up a lot in the last couple of days, and I think that's great. This is not just an individual thing. We need to come together because there are bigger battles to fight. The battles against neoliberalism, against poverty, against patriarchy, against oppression. And if we don't, men, women, and fight that together, then we're not going to win. And I'm very interested. I was in the UK about a month ago.
I'm going to have to ask you to be brief.
Just last sentence. Listening to Naomi Klein, who's brought together an anti-capitalist movement with climate change. And I think we can do that too. We can bring these movements together, and then we will succeed together.
Thank you. Yes, please, there's a hand up here. I really need the help of the volunteers to spot the hands because it's very hard for me with the spotlights. Please.
Thank you. Speaking as an African
would
woman.
you just introduce yourself?
Oh, sorry.
Just your name and...
My name is Jean Kemitare. I'm a Ugandan woman. I work with Raising Voices. Bernice, thanks for the issues that you've raised on behalf of African women. My question for this dialogue would be for us to figure out how we could frame issues better to avoid backlash, and Jagori organized a very good session. Because when we say vulnerabilities of men that men face, when we speak about engaging men for gender justice, how does that translate beyond the global dialogues that we have, where many of us are elite, maybe have 1, 2 degrees, 3? How does that translate to practitioners on the ground? People working in community-based organizations, people addressing these issues on a daily basis on ground. Does that somehow feed into the backlash that we now have? For example, people are tired, they say, of affirmative action. Women now are equal to men, therefore we don't need it. I'm speaking from my context. Women are just as violent as men in intimate partner relationships. You know, how do we address the issue of these complex conceptual dialogues that we have that inform programming, that inform funding, that inform practice, and yet are understood differently on the ground?
Excellent. Thank you. Okay, there's one last hand here, and then we'll move to the midsection.
I'm Sharda from Mumbai. I just want to ask you, because the way we pursue development has a lot to do with how the gender equations are, or men and women are perceived and given opportunities to enjoy their entitlements and rights. So in our discourse, are we going to talk about what kind of development do we as a group agree upon or look forward to pursue? Because it's not just that we talk about gender issues and not talk about the development issues, because how we pursue development has a lot to do with how men and women are looked upon in the society.
Thank you. So let's move to the midsection. Kamlaji, start from the end.
Yes, thank you. My name is Yunianti Huzaifa, Chairperson of Komnas Perempuan National Commission on Violence Against Women in Indonesia. I have 3 points. First, that how this men and boys or male involvement also strategy, also scanning deeply about the socio-political context in every country based on the historical trajectory, especially related to women's movement. For instance, based on Indonesian experience, women's movement, especially at the grassroots level, we just start after 32 years under the oppressive government. So if we suddenly have like a male involvement, I am afraid that the marginalization or soft marginalization at the community, at the grassroots level will happen gradually. This is first point. And the second point, when we talk about the global dialogue, I think when I tried to check the representative from the Southeast Asian, from the Middle East, this is still less represented in this global dialogue. So this is for the next dialogue, I think we have to include to hearing the representative, the experience from different geographic experience, especially from women, because this is totally different. We have, especially for Middle East and Indonesia, Myanmar, and etc., especially during this like a plenary, yeah, only limited represented from these countries. And my third point related to the migration issue. When we talk the most vulnerable women's group at the moment, of course a lot, but only limited talking about the migration. From our record, in 1 year, sometimes 1,000 women died because of migration. The victims of violence. And their sexual rights suddenly cut because they become a migrant workers. And their right of mobility, etc., etc. So when we talk about race, class, caste, sometimes we neglect about the other element, the receiving country, who become like another factor that sometimes we never talk deeply when we talk about the women's rights. Thank you.
Okay, can we move the mic down to Kamla?
I'm Kamla Bhasin from Sangat, the South Asian Feminist Network, and from Jagori. I've been working with men for over 20 years in the NGO movement, men in the police, senior men in the government, etc., talking about gender and masculinity. I am very happy that men have finally broken their silence. But with some of their approaches, like there are some organizations called Men Against Violence Against Women, or there are campaigns like He for She. I again sense that patriarchal sensitivity behind these names. Once again, he will be the agent. Once again, he will protect women from violence. Once again, a maybe paternalistic patriarchy. And we all know that there is hardly any difference between protecting women and controlling women. I would suggest that we have names of organizations like Men Against Patriarchy. He, for himself and changing his own masculinity rather than he for she. Because after all, most violence against women is done by men. Not all, but most. So if these fellows will behave themselves, there will be no rape. If they come and cook in the kitchens, care work will be shared. So really, forget about protecting us. You have massacred us for over 3,000 years. And we have survived, and we are kicking, and we are singing, and we are dancing. So change yourselves and change your names and the names of big movements like He for She. And Men Engage is supporting that. So I think we need to see how we engage with these big organizations who really need to build alliances with governments, etc. We can work with them. But we don't blindly support every slogan they give us. Otherwise, the potency, the politics of our movements will disappear. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. My name is Philip Otieno. I come from Kenya, and the name of my organization is Men for Gender Equality Now. I think that's good enough. Now, yes, for me, I think what we need to bring on the table when we're discussing in the next dialogue is really to look at what can we as men do to counter the men who are against gender justice. For instance, as we sit here today, yesterday in Kenya, the men against gender equality were talking about men's liberation, and some of the things they were saying is that it was a day for men not to kiss women, embrace women, not to have sex with women. The only thing they could do is to wave to women using the left hand.
But they could have sex with men if they want to.
Yeah, they didn't indicate that, yeah. So I'm wondering what we can do. The discussion should be what those of us who are for gender justice can do in terms of engaging, and we need to come up with strategies of engaging or countering such movements, such organizations. And the other thing will be in terms of attribution. Yeah, when we talk about the gains that have been made, the achievements, what can we say, what can that be attributed to? Because most of the time when we talk about issues of resources that Dean alluded to, anytime that my organization will go to ask for resources to do this kind of work, we'll be asked, so show us some evidence, the evidence generation and how to do impact evaluation. So then, how do we, if you look at the number of panels that we've had, everybody's saying I've had 20 years working with men and boys, I've had 30 years. Cumulatively, we've had so many thousands and thousands of years. But what do we attribute to the kind of things that we are seeing today? Are we seeing progression? Are we seeing retrogression? Thank you.
Thank you. I have a hand up here.
Should I just speak? Yeah.
Sorry?
I just got the mic. I'd raise my hand.
Thank you very much. I'm Fano Zoleshos. I come from South Africa.
Can I go first?
Are you in that section?
I was sitting on the floor.
I want to call it the left section. One sec. I want to call it the left section, but this section won't like it if I call it the right.
Okay. I was on the floor. It's in the center.
Okay. I just want to know one thing. Have you just seized the mic?
No, I didn't just seize the mic.
Okay, then go
I
ahead.
had raised my
and
hand. Yeah.
We have this gentleman in the middle.
Okay.
Let's be quick so we have enough time for everyone to speak, okay?
I'm from Pakistan, and there's one issue I would like to raise. I think this is to do with the second line leadership of the women's rights movement. I think it's very, very important that while we talk about different men involved with gender justice initiatives, and we talk about their differing understandings of patriarchy, of gender justice, all of that, and we are trying to hold them accountable. I just attended a session on Men Engage tools for accountability. I think it is really important to also realize there are a lot of feminists on different pages, and some of them have like this whole historical background, and they have a tendency of being dismissive of younger feminists, saying, you're just born today, you don't know what we're talking about, these men, you're trying to engage them, this is going to be a trap, you're going to get into trouble. When you're our age, you will find out. And I think that's very problematic because we don't live in the same world. We still need feminism. Patriarchy is very much alive and kicking. But to actually discount our experiences is very, very sad. I laud all the feminists who are here, especially Kamla Bhasin. I hope people in Pakistan will see her attending this and realize that they should also be part of this. We need more legitimacy. We need more first wave feminism to actually reflect and maybe give some space to others and realize that holding men accountable for everything done hundreds of years ago, seeing them only as perpetrators, is not going to bring you the world that you want. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm Fano Zoleshozi. I come from South Africa. I work for the Commission for Gender Equality of South Africa. This is very important. I think this is an interesting discussion, and thank you very much to the panel organizers. But I want to ask the panelists this question, the question of trust between, I will call them between the men's movement and the feminist movement, understanding very well that we are all informed by the feminist ideologies doing our work. This question is, there are views that the involvement of justice organizations or men's organizations are encroaching on the space of the feminist movement, thereby imposing and bringing in patriarchal tendencies. Then how do we move forward in terms of ensuring that all the nuances, the complexities that we have actually debated in this conference inform us going forward, so that there is no us and them going forward? And I need our panelists to actually assist us with the post-daily agenda in terms of engaging on gender equality matters and the movement on how we should actually talk about this issue. So that, because if we continue to say us and them, I don't think we're going to actually solve the problem. I think the issue of funding and others, they've been addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. You're next. I'll come back to you. Yeah, I'll come back to you.
Thank you very much. My name is Desmond Lunga. I'm from Botswana. I work for an organization called Men and Boys for Gender Equality. And one thing that I would want us to be talking about as men and women is the generation that we're raising. And we need to understand that as men, we have a role in bringing the boy child and the girl child. And as women, we have the role to bring our girl child and our boy child. So what are we doing as a collective to be able to say, let's raise a generation of young people who will be able to know that they're both equal? So I would say, let's have a dialogue on the generation that comes. Thank you.
Great point. Thank you. And the gentleman next to him.
Uncle G from Namibia. Somewhere in America, there's a guy who wrote a book, Think Like a Man, Act Like a Lady. I was trying to send him an email to say, can you write the opposite of that? What is the world like when men are thinking like women? Because if we are to maintain what is harming and sickening us, this thing called patriarchy, what is the opposite to patriarchy? So the dialogue, what is equality in reference to corrective rape in South Africa, gang rape in India, war, rape as a weapon of war, racism? What is equality? Where do we want to go? That needs to be the dialogue where we need to go, so that if we kill patriarchy, we actually get a clue as to where we are going.
Next? Yes.
Otherwise, we're going to be lost and fight for, like someone said, our spaces. And we need to stop fighting for our spaces.
Okay, now the lady back there with her hand up. Yes, thank you.
Hi, Lindsay from Women Deliver. I'm just going to echo what my young colleague over here said about engaging what I'm hesitant to call anything a youth movement because there's 3.5 billion people on this planet under 30, so to call it a youth movement is kind of silly. But I think that there is a lot to be said for how, young people today are organizing online, they're writing blogs, the organizing looks differently than it did in, I think, traditional feminist organizing spaces. And I think that I'm very desperate as a young feminist for some more of that intergenerational learning. And I don't think I'm the only one based on what our friend here said. So basically my question is, from what we're calling the youth movement to the feminist movement, how can, because so many young people are raising feminist issues and are experiencing severe backlash. I mean, to talk about abortion rights today is very unpopular, but and it's even, I think, a fiercer climate. So how can we learn in that sense and sort of work together? I think there's a really strong need, and there's a different fight. And so I think there's a lot to learn from what young people are having to experience today.